himmlischer Vater,
thank you for this new day of life.
danke für diesen neuen Tag des Lebens.
Thank you for that we have again this opportunity to open your word and understand you better.
Danke, dass wir ein weiteres Mal die Möglichkeit haben, dein Wort zu öffnen und dich besser zu verstehen.
I'm asking for blessings upon us as a class.
Ich bitte dich um deinen Segen auf uns als Klasse.
From Brother Marcus is leading our class.
Bruder Mark, wenn er die Klasse anleitet.
Translation and the live stream.
Auch über die Übersetzung und den Livestream.
And please help us, Father, to understand now what Brother Mark is going to present.
Hilf uns jetzt auch bitte, das zu verstehen, was Bruder Mark vorstellen wird.
Help us to be strengthened through this truth.
Bitte hilf uns, durch diese Wahrheiten gestärkt zu werden.
Give us faith in your word.
Gib uns Glauben an dein Wort.
And help us to have also patience and to endure it until the end.
Gib uns auch Geduld und hilf uns bis ans Ende durchzuhalten.
To see the beauty of your word.
Um die Schönheit deines Wortes zu sehen.
And please, Father, help us to, as we sung, to wait until that time when there will be no night there.
Und hilf uns auch, wie wir gerade gesungen haben, zu warten bis zu der Zeit, wo es keine Nacht mehr geben wird.
In Jesus' name, amen.
In Jesu Namen. Amen.
Okay, so turn to Leviticus 13.
Lass uns zu 3. Mose 13 gehen.
And just want to make a point. Go to Leviticus 13:45.
Jetzt zu 3. Mose 13, Verse 4 bis 5.
45.
45.
Yes.
Okay. 45 schon.
It says, "And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean." Right? So, now, I just want to remind us that, or would we agree that all these laws that were given to the Jews, they were hygiene laws.
Also würden wir damit zustimmen, dass all diese Gesetze, die den Juden hier gegeben würden, auch Hygienegesetze waren?
Yes, they were all laws given them for people that were sick, and so that it didn't get spread amongst everybody else, right?
Das waren letztendlich Gesetze für die Leute, die dann krank waren, dass es sich nicht unter allen ausbreiten würde.
Okay, and the person had to be put out of the camp. He had to proclaim with a loud voice that he was unclean.
Und derjenige, der aus dem Lager ausgeschlossen wurde, der musste mit einer lauten Stimme dann verkündigen, ich bin unrein.
Okay, and that they were not allowed in the assemblies of God's people. That this disease was contagious, right?
Und er wurde nicht mehr, ihm wurde kein Zugang mehr zu den Versammlungen gegeben, weil diese Krankheit ansteckend war.
So there was some arguments made about this point, but I just want to quickly look at that.
Es wurden da ein paar Argumente bezüglich dieses Punktes gemacht und ich möchte die kurz betrachten.
Now go to Micah chapter 3 and verse 7.
Gehen wir zu Micha, Kapitel 3, Vers 7.
Now the Bible says that there's no new thing under the sun, right?
Micha 3, Vers 7. Die Bibel sagt ja, es gibt ja nichts Neues hier am Ende der Welt, nichts Neues unter der Sonne.
Okay, so do we see that we still employ the very same principles today in the world?
Also können wir nicht sehen, dass wir genau dieselben Prinzipien auch heute in der Welt anwenden, was im Respect to disease, also in Bezug auf die Krankheiten. Ja.
Yes, same principles, and we have trying to apply the same laws on us, right? You know that we have to quarantine people, and they want you to put something over your mouth, etc., etc. Right?
Selben Dinge letztendlich wollen dich in Quarantäne stecken und dass du etwas über deinen Mund tust und so weiter und so fort.
Okay, so in Micah chapter 3 and verse 7, it says,
Micha 3, Vers 7 sagt es.
It says, Then shall the seers be ashamed, and the diviners confounded, yea, they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer of God. Right? So it was being suggested that that this right here, them covering their lips, is the same thing that's in Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 45.
Also es wurde von einem Bruder vorgeschlagen, dass das, was hier beschrieben ist, dieses Bedecken der Lippe, dasselbe ist wie in 3. Mose 13, Vers 45.
Okay, but if you just compare that in verse 45.
Also wenn wir das einfach nur vergleichen in Vers 45 in 3. Mose 13.
He says, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, right? And
Steht hier, es soll eine Bedeckung auf seine Oberlippe gebracht werden.
okay, first of all, when you want to understand the Bible, you've got to look at the context and what it's talking about, and remember that symbols can have more than one signification, right?
Zunächst einmal müssen wir immer den Kontext betrachten, in dem, was hier geschrieben ist, und dann auch daran denken, dass Symbole mehr als eine Bedeutung haben können.
Firstly, in Leviticus 13 verse 45, when it says rend your clothes, it's talking about literally tearing your clothes. It was a symbol, right?
Zunächst einmal, wenn hier in Vers 45 steht, dass sie die Kleider zerreißen sollten, dann hatte das eine buchstäbliche Anwendung. Sie sollten wirklich ihre buchstäblichen Kleider damals zerreißen.
Okay, so all those things that they were to do in Leviticus 13, they were literally acts that they had to carry out.
Deswegen all diese Dinge, die sie hier in 3. Mose 13 tun sollten, das waren buchstäbliche Dinge, die sie buchstäblich ausführen sollten.
Okay, but when you come to Micah chapter 3,
Aber wenn wir zu Micha 3 kommen
if you just look at verse 5,
und uns dann Vers 5 anschauen,
it says, Thus saith the Lord concerning the prophets that make my people err, that bite with their teeth. Now, are they really biting with their teeth, or is it something symbolic?
also beißen sie hier diese falschen Propheten wirklich mit ihren buchstäblichen Zähnen oder ist das hier symbolisch gemeint?
Yeah, it's symbolic. They're not going round biting people, right? Literally.
Also das ist symbolisch natürlich gemeint, die gehen ja nicht umher und beißen buchstäblich die Leute dort.
So it says, Bite with their teeth and cry, Peace, and he that putteth not into their mouths, they even prepare war against them. So when he says they prepare war against them, are they getting big armies to come and fight against God?
Und wenn es dann steht, dass die Krieg gegen sie dann vorbereiten, das heißt das jetzt, dass sie große Armeen sammeln und gegen Gott Krieg führen?
No, right? It's on about fighting against his truth by attacking his people, right? That are proclaiming the truth.
Das ist mehr, dass sie gegen die Wahrheit kämpfen, indem sie die Leute attackieren, die die Wahrheit hochhalten.
So then when you go to verse 7,
Gehen wir zu Vers 7.
Then shall the seers be ashamed, and the diviners confounded. Yea, they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer of God. Right? So what does a seer do? What's his purpose?
Was macht ein Seher? Was ist sein Sinn und Zweck?
Yes, in some sense, but okay, maybe my question is that. They speak on behalf of God, right? They're the mouthpiece of God, right?
Also sie sind Gottes Mundstück, sie sprechen an Gottes statt.
So when you look at look at what it's if there's no answer from God, what can the seer not do?
Wenn da keine Antwort von Gott kommt, was kann der Seher nicht mehr tun?
Why is it so difficult? If a seer speaks on behalf of God and God doesn't answer him, so what can the seer not do?
Also wenn der Seher an Gottes statt spricht, aber Gott antwortet ihm nicht mehr, was kann der Seher folglich nicht mehr tun?
No, that's what it says. Okay, he can't speak. Why can he not speak?
Kann nicht mehr sprechen. Warum nicht?
No, God hasn't given him a message to speak, right? So
Weil Gott ihm keine Botschaft gegeben hat, die er sprechen soll.
if you pray to God, Lord, give me, and he doesn't tell you anything, you've got nothing to say, right?
Also wenn du sagst, Herr, gib mir etwas, aber er sagt dir nichts, dann hast du auch nichts zu sagen.
So the point is here, they shall all cover their lips is something symbolic, right?
Deswegen hier, wo sie alle ihre Lippen bedecken sollen, ist etwas Symbolisches.
Right? Now just go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 28.
Gehen wir zu Jesaja, Kapitel 28.
Everything in the Bible has to be determined by context.
Alles in der Bibel muss basierend auf dem Kontext zu deuten sein.
Okay, Isaiah 28, and let's go to verse 11.
Jesaja 28, Vers 11.
It says, "For with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people." Right? So what's the lips in relation to?
Wozu stehen die Lippen hier in Bezug?
Speaking. Right?
Sprechen.
Now just go to Isaiah 11 and verse 4.
Gehen wir zu Jesaja 11, Vers 4.
It says, "But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked." Literal or symbolic?
Buchstäblich oder symbolisch?
It's symbolic, right?
Vers 4 ist auch symbolisch.
When you slay somebody with your lips, it's talking about a message, right?
Wenn du jemanden mit deinen Lippen erschlägst, das spricht über eine Botschaft.
And last one, just go to Isaiah chapter 6.
Und letzter Punkt, gehen wir noch zu Jesaja 6. Can I make a point after?
Isaiah 6 and verse 7.
Jesaja 6, Vers 7.
It says, "And he hath laid it upon my mouth, and lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged." Right? So, what were Isaiah's lips becoming?
Zu was wurden Jesajas Lippen?
Yes, but what was wrong with his mouth prior to that point? It was unclean, right?
Also was war mit seinem Mund zuvor? Der Mund war unrein.
It says that
Jetzt wird
Isaiah
gereinigt.
realized that he'd often spoken vanity, right?
Jedenfalls sagt, Jesaja hat erkannt, dass er oftmals Nichtigkeiten gesprochen hat.
So this marks a point where he's been cleansed of his leprosy, right?
Markiert er so einen Punkt, wo er von seinem Aussatz gereinigt wird.
When you're cleansed of your leprosy, now you can speak on behalf of God, right?
Wenn du jetzt von deinem Aussatz gereinigt wirst, jetzt kannst du an Gottes Stadt sprechen.
So the lips, right, are, depending on context, are speaking about speaking, right? It's about portraying of a message, right?
Also die Lippen basieren auf dem Kontext, sie stellen letztendlich etwas dar, also symbolisch gesehen, dass man eine Botschaft gibt, dass man etwas spricht.
Okay, but when you go back to Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 45,
Zurückgehen zu 3. Mose 13, Vers 5, 45.
it says, "And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean." Right? So these were literal things that they had to do, right, in order to, because they had this disease, right, and this disease was contagious.
Also das waren hier buchstäbliche Dinge, die sie tun mussten, weil sie diese Krankheit hatten und diese Krankheit war ansteckend.
Okay, but do these things have a symbolic representation? What in here?
Aber haben diese Dinge auch eine symbolische Anwendung?
Sorry, before I go on to that point, did you want to make a...
I just want to make a point. No, I don't know if you want, if you meant this, but I mean, this brother, I don't think he argued against that. They literally had to put something on the lip. He just argued that it doesn't have any hygienic purposes.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I want to see the difference between that Leviticus 13:45 is speaking about something physical that they were to do over their lips. But when you go to Micah chapter 3 verse 7, covering your lips is not something physical, it's teaching something spiritual. That's all I'm
I
showing.
mean, what he basically said only has a spiritual meaning, he doesn't have a literal meaning. But he didn't deny that they literally had to perform it. He only said basically.
He says it doesn't mean, it's got nothing to do with hygiene. He says it means that you're ashamed.
Yes. So but he didn't deny that they literally had to put a covering on their mouth. He just said it doesn't have a literal meaning, it only has a symbolic meaning.
Yes, but it's still wrong.
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
I just want to clarify that people understand his argument.
I'm not really getting into his argument. I'm just showing what's from the Bible, the context. I'm not going to bring his arguments in here. And I don't really want to focus on what he's saying. I just want to look at the Bible and show what it's actually meaning. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question was in verse 45 here, what things do we see in there that were literal things that they had to do, but represent something symbolic?
Also was sehen wir hier in Vers 45? Die buchstäblichen Dinge, die sie tun mussten, aber was hat das dann auch für eine symbolische Bedeutung?
Right, so rend your clothes is a sign of mourning, right?
Zum Beispiel die Kleider zerreißen, sagt auch die Bibel, das bedeutet das Herz zu zerreißen oder diese klagende Haltung einzunehmen.
Okay, making your head bare, right?
Deinen Kopf kahl zu scheren,
Okay.
das ist genau dasselbe Symbol dafür.
So the literal leprosy was symbolic of your sinful condition, right?
Also dieser buchstäbliche Aussatz war also symbolisch für deinen sündigen Zustand.
So all these things that we're doing here, they're all things that were literally a symbol of a broken, sinful condition, right?
All diese buchstäblichen Dinge, die sie hier tun mussten, waren letztendlich ein Symbol für ihren sündigen, zerbrochenen Zustand.
Okay. So I just want to clear that point up. So when we're looking at things, we can't jump to somewhere else in the Bible and take the same word and say, look what it's saying here, without understanding the context of what's been represented.
Deswegen, wenn wir diese Dinge betrachten, müssen wir erstmal den Kontext betrachten, in dem was gesagt wird, und dann können wir erst zu anderen Stellen gehen und das dann vergleichen.
Okay, so just and one last thing, go to Leviticus 24, verse 16.
Gehen wir noch zu 3. Mose 24, Vers 16.
Because we read in Micah chapter 3 verse 7 that when the Lord doesn't answer them, they cover their lips. And how I understand it means that they have no message, they don't speak, their mouths are stopped.
Also in Micha 3, Vers 7 haben wir gesehen, dass sie ihre Lippen bedecken sollten. Das bedeutet, sie hatten keine Botschaft mehr. Und ja, deswegen sind ihre Münder verstopft worden.
Okay, but in chapter 24 verse 16,
Kapitel 24, Vers 16 jetzt.
it says, and he that blasphemeth the name of the Lord, he shall surely be put to death, and all the congregation shall certainly stone him, as well the stranger as he that is born in the land. When he blasphemeth the name of the Lord, shall he be put to death. And he that killeth any man shall surely be put to death. Oh no, this is not the maybe it's Numbers 24. Excuse me, just let me check. This is wrong what I'm reading.
Wir sind vielleicht im falschen Buch, vielleicht ist es 4. Mose 24, lass mich das nochmal nachschauen.
No, definitely not. One second, I'll just get. Excuse me, I wrote down the wrong thing for sure. But I've got it here so I can check it.
Das ist falsch notiert.
definitely was Leviticus 24. I just maybe didn't read it correctly. 24, 16 to 18. Okay, I think I was taking what he had referenced, but he's referenced Leviticus 24, 16 to 18, but that's not what's written there.
Just type in the words that
Yes. Yes. One second. It's Ezekiel 24. Okay, that's obviously a mistake. That's not-
Ezekiel 24.
Ezekiel 24.
Ezekiel 24 und dann Verse 16 bis 18.
Okay. Okay, so it says, Son of man, behold, I take away from thee the desire of thine eyes with a stroke, yet neither shalt thou mourn nor weep, neither shall thy tears run down. Forbear to cry, make no mourning for the dead, bind the tire of thine head upon thee, and put on thy shoes upon thy feet, and cover not thy lips, and eat not the bread of men. So I spake unto the people in the morning, and at even my wife died, and I did in the morning as I was commanded. Right? So, in this one here, he's been basically told not to mourn when the people are dead. Right?
Also hier sagt letztendlich, er soll nicht klagen hier, wenn seine Frau stirbt.
But when you, in order to understand this, when you go back, where was it?
17.
Forbear to cry,
The end.
the people said, and he walked there and tell us what these things are. Okay, verse 22,
Vers 22.
it says, And ye shall do as I have done. Ye shall not cover your lips, nor eat the bread of men. Right? So, now, I could be wrong in what I'm suggesting here, but when they don't cover their lips here, it's representing that they're now going to start mourning, because Ezekiel says, you will do as I have done. And Ezekiel had given them a representation of this earlier in symbolic language, and it was pointing forward to a point where they were going to fulfill this. And now the Lord is telling them that they're about to fulfill it. And he says, you're going to do as Ezekiel did. So,
When it says not covering your lips means not to mourn, right?
not covering.
Because it says in verse 17, Forbear to cry, make no mourning
Yes.
for the dead, bind the tire of thine hand upon thee, and put on thy shoes upon thy feet, and cover not thy lips, and eat not the bread of men. So,
But why would covering your lips be mourning?
part of the ceremony here.
Ceremony?
Yeah, that's what they did. They here, put on their shoes upon their feet.
No, I know what it says there, but you have to show me somewhere else in the Bible where we just read that when you cover your lips, it means you got no message. But here they're not to cover their lips. You're basically saying now that covering your lips is mourning. Show me where else in the Bible it marks that.
But Elisha says it.
No. It tells them to do this thing. They're not to mourn, and they're not to cover their lips, but it doesn't mean it's the same thing.
Verse 18 says, So I spake unto the people. I didn't cover my lips, I spake.
So I spake unto the people in the morning, and at even my wife died, and I did in the morning. Okay, there it is, right? So this is Ezekiel's wife dying, right? I remember,
Das ist Ezekiels Frau, die hier stirbt.
and I remember this, that his wife dying was a symbol of the church dying.
Und seine Frau, wie sie stirbt, ist ein Symbol, dass die Gemeinde stirbt.
So in here, if you just take from what the Bible says, so in verse 17, he's told, forbear to cry. You're not to mourn for your wife, right?
Also in Vers 17 steht, halte zurück zu weinen. Er soll nicht für seine Frau klagen.
Okay, and put on thy shoes upon thy feet. So what's putting shoes upon your feet?
Was bedeutet es, die Schuhe auf die Füße zu ziehen?
To preach the gospel.
You're to preach, right? And
Du sollst das Evangelium verkündigen.
yes, and cover not thy lips. So put the gospel on your feet and preach to them now. So don't mourn for your wife, but open your mouth and proclaim it, right?
Okay, yes, now I get it. Also zieh deine Schuhe auf die Füße und verdeck nicht deine Lippen. Deswegen bedeutet das letztendlich, geh und verkündige das Evangelium.
Okay, so you can see the contrast there. To cover your lips means your mouth is closed. To uncover your lips means you're now going to speak.
Also deine Lippen zu bedecken bedeutet, dein Mund ist geschlossen, und deine Lippen nicht zu bedecken bedeutet, du sollst sprechen.
Okay, so you got the contrast. So it's really got no bearing on Leviticus 13 at all. The covering of your lips, right?
Deswegen in dem Sinne hat es keinen Bezug auf 3. Mose, I mean, but no literal bearing, but symbolic it has.
Lips is not lip. They had to put something on the upper lip, right? That was something literal that they had to do. But these chapters here, they're teaching something about giving a message or not giving a message. So two completely different
But I
thoughts.
mean, now the symbolic meaning of Leviticus 13, it has the same meaning, right?
Possibly, but you'd have to show that from the Bible, right?
Because when you're a leper, you are not to give a message. I mean,
Well, you are giving a message. You're saying that you're unclean.
yes, but you don't give a message of the Lord.
I'm not denying that point, but that doesn't mean that thing when you put a covering upon your lip means that you're not giving a message. That's what I'm saying. It's a hygienic law there, right?
Yeah, but it has a symbolic meaning.
Okay, but the Bible has to explain it. I'm saying that the Bible is not showing that putting this thing on your upper lip is the same as what we've just read there, because it's showing you that when your lips are covered, right, you're not speaking. When your lips are uncovered, you're speaking, right? But lips is not upper lip. It's two different things. That's all the point I'm making. You can make your own. You can take it and say, yeah, well, you're a leper. You're not giving a message. Okay, I would agree. But that doesn't mean that particular thing is showing that. And I'm open, it might mean that. But what I'm saying is, from when you read that and you go to these verses, you can't link that together. That's the point I'm making. Can't do it. It's two different things.
For me not, but maybe you're right.
Look, those two things there that we've read are symbolic, right? It means that covering your lips is something symbolic that it's talking about, and it tells you what it means, right?
Yes.
But when you go to Leviticus 13, it's not symbolic, right? It's a literal hygiene thing that you were to do, and it says you have to cover your top lip. It doesn't say cover your lips.
Yes, but isn't it that it's literal in Leviticus 13, and it's symbolic in these other passages, but with a symbolic meaning of the other passages, you can now interpret the symbolic meaning of the literal
Okay.
covering in Leviticus 13.
I'm not denying that might be true. I'm open to that, but I'm saying from what you've read, you can't prove that. You don't have enough evidence there to prove that from what we've read. That's what I'm saying.
We have two witnesses.
Lawrence, don't make these arguments now. The two witnesses are not pointing to the same thing. They were to cover their top lip. Doesn't say lips, right? Now, you'd have to go somewhere else in the Bible, right, and get that information to link these two things together to prove what I'm saying. Otherwise, you're just making your own assessment. That's what I'm trying to show here, that you can't go in the Bible to somewhere else that's showing something symbolic, right, that doesn't really say the same thing and put the two together.
I mean, Jennifer just brought it, I looked it up. Yeah, it's the word lips in Ezekiel 24 and Micah 3 can in the margin mean also. But
Yeah, I mean, everyone it
It,
says.
it can?
It says
It's
Okay,
the
well, if it does that, then that,
I want to make a point to that.
yes.
Also
Because
letztendlich der Livestream-Gruppe ist gepostet worden, dass dieses Wort Lippen hier auch Oberlippe bedeutet und deswegen kann man das schon dann zusammenbringen, dass das die symbolische Bedeutung ist.
we read in Micah chapter 3,
Wir haben ja in Micha Kapitel 3 gelesen.
verse 7.
Unten steht es in der Anmerkung.
In verse,
7
oh, Micah 3 and 7, yes.
says, Then shall the seers be ashamed, and the diviners confounded, yet they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer of God. That's the close of probation, right?
Also das letztendlich
Yes.
Because there's no answer from God, and they have to
Ende der
cover their
Gnadenzeit,
lips.
wenn da keine Antwort mehr von Gott kommt,
Yes, it says elsewhere that he doesn't hear the prayers anymore.
And
sagt er, dass er nicht mehr die Gebete hört an einer anderen Stelle.
as we studied the other day, there are two types of leprosy, correct?
Und wir haben ja am anderen Tag geschaut, da gibt es diese zwei Arten von Aussatz.
There's this leprosy where you can't be healed anymore, and there's the leprosy where you are put in quarantine for 7 days.
Es gibt diesen einen Aussatz, wo du nicht mehr geheilt werden kannst. Und dann gibt es diesen anderen Aussatz, wo du noch in diese Quarantäne für 7 Tage gesteckt wirst.
In Isaiah 6, Isaiah recognizes that he has leprosy,
Und in Jesaja 6, da erkennt ja Jesaja, dass er Aussatz hat.
and he says basically, I'm unclean, unclean. Right?
Und er sagt letztendlich, ich bin unrein, ich bin unrein.
So, the way how I would view it at the moment is that this pronunciation unclean, unclean is done by 2 different people.
Und
Yes.
so wie ich das momentan verstehe, ist, dass dieser Ausruf unrein, unrein wird von 2 verschiedenen Gruppen von Leuten gegeben.
Because Isaiah can be healed, so he has the type of leprosy where he can heal.
Denn zum Beispiel Jesaja stellt in die Gruppe dar, die diese Art von Aussatz hat, die noch geheilt werden kann. Und dann gibt es die andere Gruppe, die den Aussatz hat, die nicht mehr geheilt werden kann.
Right, and that's why when when he pronounces himself unclean, right, his lips get touched, and then he gets healed, and he doesn't need to cover his lips anymore.
Deswegen Jesaja zum Beispiel, seine Lippen werden berührt, deswegen er wird dann geheilt von seinem Aussatz und er muss nicht mehr länger seine Lippen bedecken.
Right, and he can speak the word of God because he received answer from God.
Er kann jetzt das Wort Gottes sprechen, weil er eine Antwort von Gott erhalten hat.
But in Micah 3:7, they were to cover their lips because they can't answer anymore, so they were not to speak.
Yes.
That's
Aber
the leprosy that cannot be
in
healed.
Micha 3, Vers 7, die sollten ihre Lippen bedecken, weil sie jetzt keine Antwort mehr von Gott bekommen haben. Sie konnten nicht mehr an Gottes Stadt sprechen.
And just another point is because in Isaiah was pronounced clean by the priest, right, by Christ.
Und in Jesaja, da
Spiritually speaking.
wurde Jesaja als rein erklärt durch den Priester, durch Christus,
Because
geistlich
the
gesprochen.
coal has touched you and made you clean.
Er
Right?
sagt ja dort, die Kohle hat dich berührt und hat dich rein gemacht.
But the other leper, right, he was pronounced by the priest, by Christ, unclean, right? So
Yes.
that's the curse, basically.
Aber dieser andere Aussätzige, der wurde durch den Priester, durch Christus als unrein erklärt und das ist dann dieser ewige Fluch, der
He was
über ihn
not
kam.
allowed to speak.
Yes.
Und er war nicht mehr erlaubt zu sprechen.
I got no problem with his assessment. What the point that I'm making is I'm doing a word search.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just making my.
No. I would also make those assessments, right? But the point that I'm making is that when you want to prove something, right, you have to go. You can't just put a thought in your mind and say, well, I see that there, so that must be that there. That's the point that I'm.
But now we have like a link which
Yes.
helps, right?
Also jetzt haben wir auf jeden Fall einen Link, der hilft und wir müssen letztendlich diese Links immer suchen.
Okay, so the purpose of what we are doing here is to take the Bible to prove things, not to make our own thoughts in our mind. That's the only thing that I'm trying to emphasize here.
Der Punkt ist, wir müssen halt die Bibel nehmen, um die Dinge sich selbst auslegen zu lassen. Und das ist der Punkt, den ich hier machen möchte.
Because there's too much of that goes on. And sometimes we're right, but sometimes
Eigenen
we're wrong.
Gedanken da reinbringen.
Okay.
Manchmal liegen wir damit richtig, manchmal aber falsch.
Okay, so, we're happy with that point now. So,
Also wir sind jetzt alle zufrieden mit dem Punkt, richtig?
in this argument, I basically said that both parties were right, in this sense that they are both right. One is symbolic and one is literal, and you have to bring them both together.
Also in den Diskussionen, die vor sich gingen in dieser WhatsApp-Gruppe, habe ich letztendlich gesagt, dass beide in einer Art und Weise recht haben. Es hat nämlich einmal eine buchstäbliche Anwendung und auch einmal eine symbolische Anwendung.
Okay, right. Let's just change thoughts a little bit. Go back to Leviticus 13.
Und lassen uns jetzt zu einem weiteren Gedanken kommen. Gehen wir zurück zu 3. Mose 13.
And go to verse 4.
3. Mose 13, Vers 4.
Okay, so now verses 1 to 3, it's speaking about this man whose mouth is stopped because it's been somebody that's lost their soul, right? Their probation's closed.
Vers 1 bis 3 spricht also über jemanden, wo der Mund zugemacht wird, seine Gnadentür ist zu.
In a perfect sense, right?
In dem perfekten Sinne.
Okay, but we know that we also have had this pronounced upon us right at the beginning in Eden, and we are now the seed of Adam, and we are all under this condemnation here, right?
Aber wir wissen, dass es auch über uns ausgesprochen worden ist, direkt am Anfang, wir sind alle der Same Adams und wir sind alle unter demselben Urteil.
Okay, but so we now come to our condition now, and this is verse 4 onwards, and it's showing about these people that have a probation. Right?
Aber wir kommen jetzt zu unserem Zustand, in dem wir uns momentan befinden, ab Vers 4 vorwärts. Denn da spricht es über Leute, die noch eine Möglichkeit haben, die noch Gnadenzeit haben.
It says, if the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut him up that hath the plague 7 days. So, the priest looking at this, right, it looks like leprosy, but it's only on the surface, right? So he shuts him up 7 days to see how this thing progresses, right?
Der Priester schaut sich das an und es sieht aus wie Aussatz, aber es ist nur auf der Oberfläche. Und deswegen schließt er ihn jetzt hier für 7 Tage ein und beobachtet es.
So in verse 5 it says, the priest
Vers 5.
shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight be at a stay, and the plague spread not in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. So it's now looking like that the plague has not spread, but he just wants to make sure, so he's going to put it up for another 7 days. Right?
Also sieht jetzt hier, dass diese Plage nicht sich verbreitet hat und dann schließt er ihn einfach nochmal für 7 Tage weiter ein.
So in the end of the second 7 days, there can be 2 outcomes, right?
Und am Ende dieser 2 7. Tage kann 2 Ergebnisse sein.
The first outcome is in verse 6.
Erste Ergebnis ist Vers 6.
And the priest shall look upon him again on the 7th day, and behold, if the plague be somewhat dark, and the plague spread not in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean, but it is but a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But the second outcome is verse 7.
Aber das zweite Ergebnis ist Vers 7.
But if the scab spread much abroad in the skin, after that he hath been seen of the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen of the priest again. And if the priest see that, behold, the scab spreadeth in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. Okay, so
Vers 8.
you can see this correlation. So there's 2 lots of 7 days mapped in, right?
Es gibt also zweimal diese 7 Tage.
So, and this is speaking about an individual.
Und das spricht jetzt hier über einen einzelnen Menschen.
But go to Leviticus 14,
Gehen wir jetzt aber zu 3. Mose 14
and go to verse 33.
und Vers 33.
And I want to look now at this principle and see that it's the same principle for the church.
Wir jetzt sehen, dass dasselbe Prinzip hier auch für die Gemeinde anzuwenden ist.
Okay? And this will also help us to understand this probationary thing by God's grace.
Und das wird uns auch diese Gnadenzeit, diese Sache mit der Gnadenzeit besser zu verstehen geben.
Okay, it says, And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, When ye be come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for a possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in a house of the land of your possession, and he that owneth the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, It seemeth to me there is, as it were, a plague in the house. So that he's coming and he's saying, It seems there's a plague in the house.
Vers
Right?
35, also es scheint, dass da eine Aussatz am Haus ist.
Then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priests go into it to see the plague, that all that is in the house be not made unclean, and afterward the priest shall go in to see the house. And he shall look on the plague, and behold, if the plague be in the walls of the house, with hollow streaks, greenish or reddish, which inside are lower than the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. So you can see here, when he first of all
Vers 38.
looks at the house, right? He assesses it, and then he shuts it up for 7 days.
Wenn er zuerst mal das Haus betrachtet, dann begutachtet er das und dann verschließt er es für 7 Tage.
Verse 39.
Vers 39.
And if the priest shall come again the 7th day, and shall look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague is, and they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. And he shall cause the house to be scraped within round about, and they shall pour out the dust that they scrape off without the city into an unclean place. And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and they shall take other mortar and shall place it the house.
Bis Vers
Okay.
42.
So now this was again like before. It's Mark talking about a literal house, right? Well, there's something that you can literally see on the walls. It was a living illustration, right?
Das spricht hier wieder beim buchstäbliches Haus und es war eine buchstäbliche Illustration mit buchstäblichen Aussatz am Haus.
But these things have symbolic meanings. They were to teach the people a symbolic lesson,
Und
right?
diese Dinge hatten eine symbolische Bedeutung, das sollte er symbolische Dinge lehren.
Okay, and we know that a house is a symbol of God's church, right?
Wir wissen, dass ein Haus ein Symbol für Gottes Gemeinde ist.
Okay, now or it could also be Satan's house, but a house is a symbol for a place of gathering of worshippers, right?
Das könnte auch rein theoretisch Satans Gemeinde sein, aber es ist einfach ein Haus, es ist ein Ort, wo man sich versammelt zum Anbeten.
Right. Now just go to 1 Peter chapter 2.
Gehen wir zu 1. Petrus Kapitel 2.
1 Peter chapter 2 verse 5.
1. Petrus Kapitel 2, Vers 5.
It says, and it's speaking about Christ here. If you just go to verse 3,
Es fängt hier an, über Christus zu sprechen, ab Vers 3.
it says, If so be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto a living stone. So, what has Christ been likened unto here?
Womit wird Christus jetzt hier verglichen?
A living stone, right?
Mit einem lebendigen Stein.
Disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious. Ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house unholy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Now we went to
Das ist Vers
this
5.
verse the other day. Lawrence went to this verse. And what was he trying to show from it?
Also letztes Mal sind wir zu diesem Vers gegangen und was haben wir damit gezeigt?
To understand the literal sacrifices in order to.
Yes, those literal sacrifices were pointing to something spiritual that we had to understand.
Dass wir
Right?
diese buchstäblichen Opfer verstehen müssen, um die geistlichen Opfer dadurch verstehen zu können. Also die weisen auf die geistlichen Opfer hin.
So what else do you think he's talking about here in this verse?
Also worüber spricht er also folglich noch in diesem Vers?
Come on, where do we get the sacrifices from? Which book?
Von welchem Buch erhalten wir diese Opfer?
Leviticus.
Im 3. Mose.
And what's it talking also about in this verse?
Und worüber spricht das hier auch noch in diesem Vers? Spiritual
Oh,
house.
so slow. A house, right? And if it's talking about spiritual sacrifices in a spiritual house, where is the spiritual house found?
Also wenn es hier über geistliche Opfer spricht und ein geistliches Haus, wo wird dann auch das geistliche Haus wohl gefunden?
In the same book of Leviticus.
Im selben
Right?
Buch von 3. Mose.
So if he wants you to understand that the sacrifices are spiritual, he also wants you to understand that the house is spiritual, and you have to go and look at this, what we're reading, right?
Also wenn du verstehen möchtest, was die geistlichen Opfer sind, musst du auch schauen, was mit dem Haus ist. Das ist dann in 3. Mose, findest du die Bedeutung des geistlichen
And
Hauses.
just go to Ephesians chapter 2.
Gehen wir zu Epheser Kapitel 2. And by the way, Scott already gave the answer
What's that?
about the spiritual house. You might have
No.
overheard it.
No, I know it's a spiritual house, but that's not what I was asking.
Ephesians 2, he said.
Ephesians 2.
Epheser 2.
I was asking where he was pointing when he's talking about spiritual sacrifices, right? In order to understand the spiritual sacrifice, where do you have to go? You have to go to the book of Leviticus. So if, in this very same verse, if he's talking about a spiritual house, where do you have to go? You have to go to the book of Leviticus. That was the question.
Also meine Frage war, wenn er über die geistlichen Opfer spricht, um die verstehen zu können, wo muss man hingehen? Man muss zum 3. Buch Mose gehen. Und deswegen spricht er im selben Vers ja auch über das geistliche Haus. Folglich musst du dann auch zum 3. Mose gehen. Das war letztendlich die Antwort, die ich wollte.
Okay, the point that I want to see from that verse is that if you want to understand this spiritual house, you have to go back to the law, to this house that they're talking about there is going to teach us this
Deswegen,
lesson.
wenn du das geistliche Haus verstehen musst, musst du zurück zu dem Gesetz gehen. Und dieses Haus, was da beschrieben wird, das ist dann, was sich diese geistliche Lektion erklären wird.
Okay, so verse 19.
Epheser 2, Vers 19.
It says, Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. Right? So, just like in 2 Peter, it speaks about
Vers 20.
Christ, and it likens you, you're also these lively stones, right?
Also es vergleicht dich hier mit Christus und dass du auch wie diese lebendigen Steine bist.
And right here it points about Christ as the foundation, but the apostles and prophets are also the foundation, right?
Wie gesagt, dass Christus ist das Fundament oder dieser Eckstein und die Propheten sind dann dieses Fundament und die Apostel auch.
Because the apostles and prophets are also typified by Christ, right?
Weil die Apostel und die Propheten sind ja auch durch Christus
This
vorausgeschattet.
is what we're looking at here. When you come here and you become the anointed one, you're this is what Christ was pointing to. His people that speak on his behalf become the anointed one, right?
Das haben wir uns angeschaut, dass wenn du hier hinkommst, wirst du dieser Gesalbte und du sprichst jetzt an Gottes statt.
Okay, so did we know that? So which verse did we read today?
21 and 22 you started.
It says here in verse 21.
Lesen wir weiter, Vers 21.
It says, In whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto a holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. Right? So now if you go
Vers
back
22.
if you go back to Leviticus 14,
Jetzt zurückgehen zu 3. Mose 14.
verse 39.
Vers 39.
It says, And the priest shall come again the seventh day, and shall look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the walls of the house. Then the priest shall command they take away the stones in which the plague is, and they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. Okay,
Vers 40.
so now we've got the understanding. What is it talking about right here?
Worüber spricht das jetzt hier?
If this is the spiritual house, what's it referring to?
Also wenn das hier das geistliche Haus ist, worauf nimmt das Bezug? Wenn die Steine hier rausgeschmissen werden.
Read the verse. What are they doing in the verse? Therefore, what is it referring to?
Also was tun sie hier in dem Vers? Worauf nimmt das Bezug?
What, sorry? Okay, so who are the stones?
Sie schmeißen die Steine raus. Und wer sind die Steine? Was haben wir gelesen?
The individuals, right?
Das waren Gemeindemitglieder.
So what it's showing is that sin has come into the house of God, right?
Es zeigt hier, dass Sünde in das Haus Gottes eingekehrt ist.
Right? It's showing you this lesson using leprosy, which is a symbol of sin.
Es benutzt den Aussatz als Symbol für die Sünde.
Were they to leave those leprous stones in the building?
Und sollten sie diese aussätzigen Steine in dem Gebäude belassen?
No,
Nein.
why not?
Warum nicht?
Because it's contagious, right?
Weil es ansteckend ist.
Okay, so the point is, you see right here, it says, verse 40, it
Sagt
says,
uns hier in Vers 40.
Then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague is, and they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. Right? So, without the city, what does that refer to?
Also außerhalb der Stadt, worauf nimmt das Bezug? Auf the camp.
Yes, it's out the camp, but what does it mean? What does
Also
what does it represent symbolically?
Außerhalb des Lagers, aber was stellt das symbolisch gesehen dar? Banished.
You're banished for eternity, right? It's the curse that's come upon you.
Du bist jetzt für alle Ewigkeit ausgestoßen. Das ist der Fluch, der über dich gekommen ist.
How do we know that?
Woher wissen wir das?
Because Christ was crucified outside the camp, right?
Weil Christus außerhalb des Lagers gekreuzigt worden ist.
And when he hung on the tree, he took upon himself the curse, right?
Und als er dort am Baum hing, hat er den Fluch auf sich genommen.
So this is marking when the shaking's taking place, right? And sin is found in the camp, right? When you get to the end of that sheet, sin is found in the camp, they're going to be removed from the camp.
Also markiert hier diese Erschütterung, und wenn Sünde im Lager gefunden wird, dann werden sie hier aus dem Lager hinausgetan.
And verse 42.
Vers 42.
And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house. What's it now? There's more information here. What's it teaching us?
Was lehrt uns das jetzt hier?
Yes, I've been replaced, but where do we
Wenn ersetzt, und wo sehen wir das zum Beispiel?
do we have illustrations that when people leave God's house, other people come in and replace
Haben
them?
wir Darstellung, dass wenn Leute Gottes Haus verlassen, dass andere kommen und sie ersetzen?
Yeah, I mean, in the very same. That's why the word was created to replace the angels in heaven.
Yeah, okay, yes, replace the angels in heaven.
Zum
right?
Beispiel,
That's
das war auch
another-
der einzige Grund, warum die Erde erstmal erschaffen worden ist, um die Engel im Himmel zu ersetzen.
But what I'm saying, there's many illustrations of this. When those that are flying the banner, when they drop the banner, it says other people come in and take their places and pick up the banner, right?
Also Ellen White hat viele Visionen, wo sie auch sagt, diejenigen, die das Banner Immanuels tragen, wenn sie das niederlegen, dann kommen andere und ersetzen sie und tragen das Banner weiter.
Okay, the last point. Go to, because in verse 42 it says that they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house.
Nur noch Vers 42 lesen.
So just go to the book of Ezekiel.
Gehen wir zum Buch Hesekiel.
I think it's chapter 13.
Hesekiel 13.
Because the Bible always explains itself, right?
Die Bibel erklärt sich immer selbst.
Yes, it's here, right? So, Right, let's 10. Speaking about, in fact, let's just read verse 2 and then we'll jump to verse 10.
Ezekiel 13, Vers 2 und dann Vers 10.
It says, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel that prophesy, and say thou unto them that prophesy out of their own hearts hear ye the word of the Lord. So which prophets is it here?
Also, welcher Prophet wird hier beschrieben?
They're false prophets, right?
Falsche Propheten.
And go to verse 10.
Gehen wir zu Vers 10.
Even because you have seduced my people. So who are these false prophets?
Wer sind diese falschen Propheten?
No, that's what they are.
Deceiver.
The what, sorry?
Deceiver.
Okay, come on, you did this topic the other
That
day.
woman.
Well, that's that woman, right? It's the
Das-
Proverbs 7 woman,
Das ist
right?
die Frau aus Sprüche 7.
Right? Even because you have seduced my people, saying peace, and there was no peace. And one built up a wall, and lo, others daubed it with untempered mortar. So what sort of mortar are they daubing the wall with here?
Mit was für einer Art Mörtel streichen sie hier die Wand?
Untempered mortar, right?
Ungetünchten Mörtel.
Say unto them which daub it with untempered mortar, that it shall fall. There shall be an overflowing shower, and ye, O great hailstone, shall fall, and a stormy wind shall rend it. What's going to rend the wall?
Das ist Vers 11. Also was wird die Wand zum Einsturz bringen?
A stormy wind, right?
Ein Sturmwind.
It says, Lo, when the wall is fallen, shall it not be said of you, where is the daubing wherewith ye have daubed it? So, what is the untempered mortar? What's it a symbol of?
Also was ist die ungetünchte Mörtel? Wofür steht er?
What is it that holds and binds all the people together?
Was hält und verbindet all die Leute miteinander?
The truth, right?
Die Wahrheit.
And if it's untempered mortar, it's going to fall to pieces, right?
Wenn es ungetünchtes Mörtel ist, dann wird das zu Stücken zerfallen.
Now, quickly, last point, just go back to Leviticus 14, and you just see this clearer.
Noch ein Punkt, gehen wir nochmal zurück zu Leviticus 14, also 3. Mose 14. Da werden wir das dann, denke ich, noch genauer sehen.
Verse 42.
Vers 42 nochmal.
And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and shall place to the house. And if the plague come again and break out in the house, after that he hath taken away the stones, and after that he has scraped the house, and after it is placed up, then the priest shall come and look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the house, it is a fretting leprosy in the house, it is unclean. And he shall break down the house, the stones of it, and the timber thereof, and all the mortar of the house, and he shall carry them forth out of the city into an unclean place.
Bis Vers 45.
So if removing those people from the house doesn't cleanse the whole house is going to be broken down, right?
Also wenn das Hinwegtun dieser Leute nicht das Haus reinigt, dann muss nachher das gesamte Haus niedergerissen werden.
Okay, I'll just give you quickly two witnesses. Go to the book of Job.
Da möchte ich dir 2 Zeugen für geben. Gehen wir zum Buch Hiob.
Chapter 2.
Hiob Kapitel 2.
Chapter 1, sorry.
Kapitel 1, Hiob 1. Hiob 1,
Verse 19.
Vers 19.
This is the fourth time the messenger comes to Job, right?
Das ist jetzt der 4. Botschafter, der hier zu Hiob kommt.
And behold, there came a great wind. What comes?
Was kam hier?
A great wind, right?
Großer Wind.
What brought down the wall in Ezekiel 13?
Was hat die Wand in Hesekiel 13 niedergebracht?
A stormy wind,
Ein
right?
Sturmwind.
And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the four corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So, what is it signifying here?
Also was stellt das jetzt hier dar?
When all four corners of the house are brought down, what does Leviticus teach us?
Wenn all die 4 Ecken des Hauses niedergebracht wird, was hat das Levitikus uns gelehrt?
Right, it's done for them, right? It's the close of probation,
Das
right?
ist für sie jetzt zu Ende. Es ist das Ende der Gnadenzeit für sie.
Right, and just last thought, go to Matthew chapter 7.
Letzter Gedanke dazu, Matthäus 7.
Okay, verse 24.
Matthäus 7, Vers 24.
Now, Matthew 7 is speaking about these false prophets, right?
Matthäus 7 spricht über diese falschen Propheten, richtig?
And they have this outward display, but what's wrong with them?
Und sie haben diesen äußerlichen Schein, aber was ist falsch mit ihnen?
What does it tell us in Matthew 7? What's inside of them?
Was ist in ihnen gemäß Matthäus 7?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're inside their hearts, right?
In ihren Herzen sind sie diese reißenden Wölfe.
So what does Christ do with the sacrifice? When you're to bring this sacrifice, what does he do with it?
Wenn du dieses Opfer bringen musst, was macht er damit?
Cuts it open and looks inside. He looks everywhere to see if that leprosy is gone inside, right?
Er schneidet das Opfer auf und schaut überall hin, die aus, als irgendwie tief eingedrungen ist.
Okay, so, and it says here, verse 24,
Sagt uns in Vers 24.
therefore whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded on a rock. So, this house was built with good mortar, right?
Dieses Haus wurde hier mit einem guten Mörtel gebaut.
And that good mortar is a symbol of Christ, the rock, the truths that they were built upon, right?
Und dieser gute Mörtel ist ein Symbol für den Felsen, für Christus, für die Wahrheiten, auf dem das Haus gebaut worden ist.
It says, and every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Okay, so
Das ist Vers 27.
you can see here this illustration of these two houses, right?
Wir sehen hier diese Darstellung der 2 Häuser.
And it's all about this, whether or not they're bound together by this true mortar or this untempered mortar.
Also sie werden jetzt hier zusammengebunden, entweder durch den wahren Mörtel oder durch diesen ungetünchten Mörtel.
So when the Lord brings the storm, He's going to prove your house whether in your probationary time, right, and all those people that have left and other people have come in, whether or not this house is going to stand, right?
Also der Herr, wenn er diesen Sturmwind bringt, dann prüft er also, ob du in der Gnadenzeit, wo Leute gegangen sind und neue reingekommen sind, ob dein Haus bestehen kann.
Because that's what we've been doing, right? We've been building a house, and the house is all based upon the truth. Whether this is what knits us together, right?
Und das ist ja, was wir auch hier tun. Wir bauen hier sozusagen unser Haus auf und es soll alles basierend auf der Wahrheit sein und das ist ja, was uns letztendlich zusammenhält.
Right.
Richtig?
So just in a simplistic way, you can see what it's representing.
Also einfach auf dieser einfachen Darstellung kann man sehen, was es alles darstellt.
However, I'm sure that those 2 lots of 7 days have something prophetic that we have to understand.
Aber ich bin mir sicher, dass diese 2 mal 7 Tage natürlich etwas Prophetisches bedeuten und das wir verstehen müssen.
Right?
Richtig?
But I just hope that helps to clear up some things of how we're viewing things.
Ich hoffe, dass das ein wenig das aufklärt, wie wir Dinge zu betrachten haben.
Right?
Richtig?
Okay, let's close.
Dann lass uns mit Gebeten abschließen.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word this morning.
Lieber himmlischer Vater, wir danken dir für dein Wort heute Morgen.
And as we go in this day,
Wenn wir jetzt in diesen Tag hineingehen,
please keep us
haltet uns bitte fest.
and
uns nicht vernachlässigen, zu studieren und zu beten.
In Jesus' name.
In Jesu Namen. Amen.
Amen.